Hey there, rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you a showdown between myself on Ragtime Grusbalesta versus Paul Reissmann and his take on Stax Zacky. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series now taking orders on our Q4 2024 circuit kits, and our guest lecturer members, wyatt. Class is in session. So as we jump into it here, again, Paul is playing a Stax Zacky list. This is a resonator-focused list that is designed to investigate to increase its utility while keeping your opponent taxed under things like mask or just the great control options like Fiola, or even the police officer that makes it so they can only play one thing a turn. And on the right, I am playing Ragtime Grusbalesta. So this is using new Grusbalesta with the new effect that he can start this game with any stone, and that any stones called by a ruler do not have text on the turn they come in, and come in as an Omni Stone. So you can just start with Ragstone on one, not have to worry about coming in to play tapped, and then immediately get to start using your rulers without having to call stone. It's very, very helpful at the gate. Mooj Dart is there just to provide, the extra hand and utility, but really the star of the show in this deck is Grusbalesta. Gets to make use of a lot of cool cards, things like Red Wine Inbred, Ambushing Scorpion, as well as the utility that is the Grusbalesta multi-stone type cards like Ultra Magic Stone Golem, or notably Awakening of Grusbalesta. So beginning of game triggers, Paul does have the mask, and we are going to stack that ragstone on top. Our first stone call of the turn is, of course, the ragstone, and then we're just going to pass. There's nothing we can do here because we'd want to play a resonator, but we don't have one. We'd want to play Suya there, but ultimately not. Paul is choosing to use the coin here to play using the quick cast to play the investigator here, the professor, to kind of set up there for ramp. I'm not entirely sure if I would have burned coin for the ramp. I think there is a world where you should hold it, use your one stone for the turn to play the doctor, so then you have 2 will, potentially 4 will on your turn 2 by having that. But we do set up this nice double investigate here. We've got an Institute and a Fiola. We're going to try to play one more because of mass to play Red Wine Inbred. This is one of the ways for the deck to try to ramp ahead. In place, we're going to see from hand using the Fiola, which I think is a little incorrect. I think I would have kept hand size there, especially since he has a Zacky's new plan in hand, and instead used the one from the investigate pile there instead, just to kind of, again, increase consistency and increase hand resources just in case that mask gets answered. So we're going to see the blue-black pain stone come in here after a full pass. Swinging for 5 takes down to 35. And then now we're at the point where Paul can kind of sit back and have some goodwill to be able to interact with things that I might try to do. You see, he does have a new plan in hand. This could be potentially very good under something like a mask. If I try to overcommit to something, he can just pay 1 for the new plan by expelling a card, especially if I try to commit to something like another. If I tried to commit to another Red Wine Inbred, then he only has to pay 1 and can new plan it and keep that out of the way. Can do some pretty cool stuff there. Down comes Morgana at the end of the turn after a pass from me. Then chooses to move to the recovery, gets a couple things explore or investigated there. Kaguya's Stone of Sorrow, gonna pay another 300. Not going to do much here because the cards are still both known, so they just get rearranged, and because there's no card that hasn't been investigated on top of them, they stay revealed. And then so we're just going to probably see a pass, maybe some combat here. We're going to swing in with the Fiola, try to go in for 500. In comes the Ambushing Scorpion. This is essentially quick cast for a little bit more expensive Red Wine Inbred on a body that has Bane, which is pretty huge. So pretty good card overall, especially into having the Grusbalesta stuff, because it make that stone that he plays into a real stone. We're going to see the Academy City Police Officer get flashed in response. This is essentially just to make it so that I don't get a chance to play another blocker. So then the Resonator has been cast. Paul also was locked out of a Resonator here, but now that I only have one will left over. I'm not going to be able to respond at all to this Mermaid's Thunder Parasol to kill the Scorpion. So that is fine. We're going to say that is okay. Get shuffled in. The 500 damage is going to get to go through because I can't play another Resonator this turn. The inherent kind of downside here is that Paul is now fully tapped out going into my turn, because this is again in response to his combat piece. So the stone from the Scorpion comes into play recovered, although this one is the Memory of Reincarnation, so I would have to pay 300 for it to come into play recovered, which I am going to do. So we're going to go down to 32 and then use the 1 will from it to pay for the cost to activate Grusbalesta's effect to sack a stone and get a new stone into play tapped, and then Memory of Reincarnation is going to draw me a card when it leaves the field. So a great little value piece here. This is one of the things about Even Under Mask. It's just kind of more will commitment, but you can get the plays that you need. I'm going to swing in with that Morgana and then just to pass the turn. Move to recovery. We're going to, before recovery, pay 1 to use Mooj Start just to filter. We've talked about this before, but in a mask environment, anything that can help you like mana ramp is very good into a mask environment, because suddenly, you know, it's not as much of a tap out to play the cards that, you know, you were wanting to play anyway. Any kind of will discount, or which is inherently risky for playing into something like Muse Spirit, Spirit of the Misty Ruin, or ramp in general can be very good here. So in this instance, we've got Ultra Magic Stone Golem to come in here because we've got 4 unique stones, and so it only costs me 1 black. That clears the board, and then we can use the other stone to play Suya, which can get rid of the mask. From there, we can play a Red Wine and Bread without having to be taxed. We'll pay 100 for that. And then we can float some will from there and just use Grusbalesta to turn it into a permanent stone as well. So a really powerful turn here, being able to just put a big threat on board, clear the board, kind of reset Paul a little bit, and get our ramp in and kind of threaten potential lethal next turn, especially since we're going to be able to probably have a resonance trigger or 2 to make these guys even bigger. And, you know, like you said, like you see, I have a lot of cards in hand too. Paul choosing to pay 300 life here for the Kaguya Stone. Sets it on top. Rearranging those cards. Does have some spot removal here. Now keep in mind that right now I have 1 Omni Stone and 1 blue, white, black stone. So I do have 2 Sword of Progressions in hand, but I haven't gotten it live yet, and there's nothing to do there. So we're going to, before recovery, attempt to filter with Mooj Dart, because we don't have to pay for it at this point in time. And then attempt to move to recovery. Paul here choosing before recovery to go ahead and do Mermaid's Thunder Parasol to answer the Ultra Magic Stone Golem. He has exactly 5 cards in hand, so it's 2,000. We're going to take advantage of that and use Statue of the Misty Dragon to flicker our Ultra Magic Stone Golem, so it will come into play at the end of the turn instead of getting destroyed. So both of us getting to stack cards, shuffle in his case and stack to the bottom on mine, and then move to recovery. And like I said, this is a Grusbalesta deck. I like the fact that it is a Grusbalesta deck. He's probably one of my favorite of the 6 sages. And so we're just going to Judgment him. We're just going to hard Judgment him. Again, he does have 5 unique stones at least. So he has Eternal. 6 different stones technically. So he is getting +12/+12. So representing himself as a 19/19. And he has Eternal. And then because I did perform Judgment of a Ruler, I get to draw a card off of Mooj Start. So just putting this big old threat onto the board and drawing a card, and then at the end of the turn, Ultra Magic Stone Golem is going to get to come back into the field, clear out anything that he might put into play here. Ultra Magic Stone Golem comes back in. It's going to wipe the board, and then still before in that last sequence of the turn, with priority sequences after the enter effect has resolved so he doesn't lose his board immediately, Paul is probably going to try to reestablish something with his extra will. We're going to see a Morgana come down here. I say that is fine. You can go ahead and have that. Draw for turn. Get to investigate a couple. We do see that we hit the guy that can be cast for 1 while it's investigated. So probably going to see that get cast to just maximize the will here before recovery. We do see that student detective assistant. Do have a couple of mask in hand, but at this point in time, mask isn't going to really do much. Okay, you got to deal with the fact that there is a 20/20 with Pierce on the board. We don't have a lot of investigates here. We don't have a lot of clues, so Morgana is tiny. And so there's a lot of threat and pressure here on the board. Do have a new plan. Gonna play the Academy Cities Guard unit. So if I do have any targeted spot removal, I'll have to target that. Does set up for an investigate next turn. And then pass the turn there. Then we move to recovery, get to filter a little bit, although at this point in time it's not super needed. Before recovery, we're going to try to just throw out a girl staring at just to prevent any kind of potential concerns about a potential push here. It's also before recovery. Now, Paul here does something interesting. He uses new plan by full paying for it. This is a situation where Paul could have done the expel a card from hand instead and saved himself some will to potentially interact, especially since now the girl staring at has essentially done its job by forcing Paul to be fully tapped out. And so now we get to do a sword of progression to set up for future swords, and we get to quick cast in a Lucifer to set up some even more drain gain and just make it so that we are kind of just set with whatever we need to go. Now you see I hit a Ragnarok stone here. That is going to come into play tapped because Grusbalesta is flipped and doesn't have that ability, but all of these stones produce all 5 colors right now because of Grusbalesta's continuous ability, so it's just a matter of clearing the board. So we're going to just play another Ultra Magic Stone Golem, wipe the board, and then swing in for 20 to close out game 1. Going into game 2 here, see how things might change. Paul choosing to take the coin again. That is the one thing about Grusbalesta, is that he does actually, you know, it can be kind of will intensive if you're trying to go for the things like the red wine and bread, but he does have, you know, if he can get to multiple different stones, he does have very good ways to answer mask in the form of, like you saw, Ultra Magic Stone Golem to wipe the field, following that up immediately with a Suya. So very good use of the darkness cards to be able to help push through in the mask environment. Do you see here we're going to be starting with the mask once again. First stone here, and then probably just going to slam out and see if he has an answer for the Suya. Paul starts to pick up the mask to banish the mask instead, but it does decide instead to flash in Professor with the coin and then banish Professor instead so the mask can stay active. We'll have to burn coin for that, which is a little unfortunate, but it is what's happening. So calling a stone, hits a blue-black stone and has to pass. Now seeing that Paul only has 1 stone, we are in a position where even under mask, we're probably just going to try to commit to a stone ramp, feeling a little bit comfortable that we're probably not going to see any kind of meaningful interaction for going for it. It is a tap out, and we're playing against a slower deck, so we're pretty safe to probably not have to worry about a crackback in any meaningful way. So we'll pay 300 for the Stone of Reincarnation to come in, use the 1 from it to pay for the Grusbalesta effect, ramp a stone into play tapped, and successfully get it so that on turn 4, or on turn 3, we are going to be sitting at 4 stones, which is pretty huge. So Paul's going to be sitting with 2 will, does have to just say pass there. So we'll move to recovery, call stone, Get a Stone of Sympathy. We are at 4 unique stones. This is what we want. Go to swing in for 500 damage. Says I will take that. I forgot to recover my 2 rulers. You'll see me fix that here in just a little bit. And then Paul's asking, verifying exactly how I'm at 4 stones, talking about the red wine and bread elements, and the fact that I went first. So first turn, second turn, stone off of Grusbalesta, and then third turn with calling for stone. At that point in time, just for good measure, we're going to go ahead and pay to play an Ultra Magic Stone Golem. The idea is it's not going to blow anything up here, but it only costs us 1 and puts a 20/20 body onto the field that Paul has to then try to answer. This feels very, very good. We're going to see a Mermaid's Thunder Parasol come down here to just destroy it. Makes a lot of sense. Paul doesn't want to have to struggle against a 20/20 threat that fast. And then we're probably just going to pass the turn over to Paul. Mr. Recovery, call stone. Now, interestingly enough, does try to go for a Magic Stone Research Institute. So this is interesting in the fact that it costs 3, but it refunds 1 because of that ramp. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to pay 300 or pay 3 will in response to Girl Staring At, so it doesn't get that enter effect. So you have the thing, but it's not going to ramp you any. So you've essentially tapped yourself out for that addition. And then at that point in time, we have 5 unique stones. So Awakening of Grusbalesta gets discounted to a total of 10, even though it's only being taxed 1. So it becomes only 1 to cast, and at that point in time we can animate all 4 of our stones and swing in for 4,000. So a little bit of a quicker match this week. Paul will have an in-depth discussion on Zacky later this week, as well as the deck profile for Grusbalesta, and until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.